Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Motivating Your Workers with Opportunity Marketplaces. Our speaker today is Michael Schrage, Research Fellow at the MIT Initiative on the Digital Economy and guest editor of the MIT SMR Deloitte Research Report, Opportunity Marketplaces, Aligning Workforce Investment and Value Creation in the Digital Enterprise. Michael, welcome and over to you.
Thank you so much, Paul. It's a real pleasure to have this opportunity and to talk about this research, which is part of a thematic effort that we've done with organizations such as Google and McKinsey about the future of performance and how digital transformation transforms, enables, and empowers human capital and capabilities. So, as is often the case with these kinds of webinars, you talk about the research. I really want to put a snap in the tail of that and really try to build and extend upon the report, which obviously I urge you to take seriously and have a look at. But I think it's important for this particular report to offer a bit of background. I'll be brief on this. Most of you, if not all of you, have heard the cliche about consultants. What consultants do is they borrow your watch and tell you what time it is. In the interests of full disclosure, the research that we did with Deloitte, and they were a very good partner for this, the research that we did with Deloitte was really trying to we began by looking at how did most workers and managers feel or perceive the way their organizations were investing in them, in their capabilities. How did they believe, perceive, or feel that their organizations looked at them not just as cost centers, but as assets and as resources that deserved to be cultivated? And what we found largely was that there was a fundamental disconnect. That organizations where people felt that the organization was investing in them, those people were much, much happier. They were much more like, we did a net promoter score kind of metric on this. They were much more engaged, pleased, etc. with that. But there was a fundamental disconnect with how the leadership of organizations felt about what they were investing in people and how they thought about people and how people themselves felt about this. And so our research really evolved around exploring the nature of this disconnect. And as a byproduct, and a byproduct became the focus, as a byproduct, what really happened was that what we heard more and more from organizations that had the highest ratings and had the most interesting responses was people talking about provisioning of opportunity. Provisioning of opportunity. We'll go into detail on that in a moment. But what we really realized was that the focus was that the source of this disconnect was not just about training or development, but how people perceived the kinds of opportunities they had and that they were in a position to take advantage of. Now, I must tell you, in the spirit of full disclosure, that this was a survey done before COVID-19, but as you will hear shortly, all of the things that we found, literally everything that we found, became more important in this disruptive pandemic environment rather than less important. In fact, it's not just important, it's urgent. So I mentioned a moment ago perception issues here. I got to tell you, just to soften the terrain, lay the groundwork here, that if your organizational culture is really looking at labor, looking at people as a cost to be managed rather than a resource, this opportunity market seminar is probably not for you. Opportunity markets will be a tactic, a cost efficiency tactic, cost effectiveness tactic, rather than a human capital investment tactic for you. What we really found was that the organizations that took their people most seriously, the organizations that really perceived people as an asset, the organizations that really thought about what does it mean to invest in people, these were the organizations that were most explicit, most enthusiastic, and most vested in the notion of facilitating opportunity. And I don't like using this word, but I'm going to have to. there's an ontology of opportunity. Different organizations define opportunity differently. Some organizations might prize mobility over skills, over technical expertise, over project collaboration. There are different ways of defining opportunity. The key takeaway here is that the way the way effective organizations defined and utilized and invested in opportunity and opportunity markets was not of what are the best opportunities or what opportunities should we be creating for our people. It was around alignment. What kind of opportunities and opportunity markets should we create that best align with and reinforce our strategic outcomes, our desired strategic objectives? That was the key design element here. How do we align opportunity with strategy? So when we talk about an opportunity that makes it possible to do something, the added point here is makes it possible to do something for our people and strategically for the organization, that it aligns with the strategic direction of the organization. And this issue becomes more important in the COVID environment because, and I hope that you will forgive my cynicism here, most organizations are not in a position to give their people significant raises or bonuses or various kinds of promotions. There's too much flux. You're not even in a position to transfer somebody from one office to another, and a different, traditional job rotation isn't around in this. What can you give your people? What can you give your people that matters, that they will take seriously, that they will perceive, hopefully correctly, as a literal and figurative investment in their future? I think opportunity is one of the most important things you can give your people. Every single organization that we spoke with acknowledged and recognized this. And I want to stress this. This is every single organization that we spoke with after we did the original research and are talking with in the middle of the pandemic environment. I'll give you names in a couple of moments, but it's profound that one of the most important and valuable things you can give people, offer people at this time, are opportunities that they might not otherwise have had, even in a remote environment. And I think that's a very big deal. And that's why thinking and envisioning what you want opportunity markets and opportunity platforms to be is key. The other big takeaway is opportunity needs to be seen not just aspirationally. Gee, isn't it wonderful to offer our people opportunity? It becomes an integrative principle for many of the diverse and siloized opportunities that you currently present people. Mentoring, reverse mentoring, learning, training, peer group collaboration, projects, jobs, tasks. What we found in the majority of organizations is that a significant plurality have one or all of these things in organizations. They're run usually by HR, sometimes by different parts of the organization, sometimes by ops, but they're all siloized. They don't talk to one another. Being in one channel does not give you access to other channels. There's no effort to integrate them. There's no effort to personalize. There's no effort to customize. That's not true for the leading organizations that we spoke with. But what we have, as is so often the case in larger organizations, are functional silos, opportunity silos, rather than an effort to create coherence and holistic approach, to put individuals in a better position to literally and figuratively see what kinds of opportunities make most sense for them, which ones are complements, which ones are substitutes, etc. So the biggest takeaway that we came away with is that serious organizations are investing in opportunity marketplaces. They are coming up with human systems and digital platforms that allow talent across the enterprise to access opportunities for the organization while building skills and capabilities for themselves. I'm going to give you a couple of cases in a moment, but I've seen this, we've seen this in areas ranging from telemedicine, from the Henry Ford organization, to what kind of digital projects should I be involved with at Schneider Electric, to making better pizza at Domino's. What we're seeing is organizations that really, again, there we go, are organizations that are bundling up opportunities and marketing them in the enterprise. We talk about customer engagement, etc. How do you want your people to perceive and experience the opportunities that you present? How do you brand opportunity in your organization? Predominantly as a vehicle to get your job done, as a vehicle to develop your skills, as a vehicle to connect with customers and colleagues differently, as something that is data-driven. How do you want to brand opportunity? I am going to argue, in fact, I do argue, that this is the most significant shift for internal expectations management in the post-pandemic era to follow. Yes, we're going to have remote work. Yes, we have a distributed and dispersed workforce. What will opportunity mean to them? Sure, they know what their jobs are going to be, but when you want them thinking about their future in the organization, what kind of brand of opportunity are they going to describe you as offering? This is the key. And what we observed is that, as important as it is, and I don't want to knock McKinsey here, but they very much stress the importance of keeping your most talented people to be and enhancing the capabilities of your most talented people. Absolutely. But what we saw in every organization that we surveyed, that we spoke with, was that opportunity markets supported the most talented, the top quintile, and everyone. You wanted to create egalitarian markets for opportunity. Again, to be sure, talented people on a fast track may have access and visibility into a greater variety of opportunities and greater priority. But at the same time, you wanted to mobilize and motivate everyone in the workforce to recognize that they were being put in a position to better invest in themselves. And so there is a real interesting balance between opportunity marketplaces as things that support the high flyers, high pose, and everyone. And it was intriguing to see this commitment played out in the organizations that we worked with. One of the interesting things that's directly a byproduct, I would say, of what's going on with remote work and the digitalization of platforms and the digitalization of jobs and processes is that, and I credit Jeff Schwartz at Deloitte, one of the co-authors of the paper, for making this point, is that as you have digital jobs and digital processes, you can disaggregate those jobs. You can disaggregate those processes. You can deconstruct those jobs into various tasks, and you can create markets in those tasks, not just in the entirety of those jobs. And those digital platforms can give you visibility into saying these kinds of tasks, data analysis, survey review, customer support, remote facilitation of focus groups, et cetera, et cetera. This can be done to create an opportunity for people who want to diversify their skills, their exposure, their capability. So instead of a job market or a role market, you can have markets in tasks. And one of the tricks and challenges, just to foreshadow this, is how do you do the data governance and the data tagging so that you really get greater sophistication and insight into this? And one of the metaphors that we came up with is your opportunity marketplace more like a Craigslist or an Amazon? What level do you have should you have recommender systems, recommendation engines to recommend opportunities for people, or people who pursued this task were also interested in that task? This is a fantastic opportunity for those organizations that take, with full acknowledgement to Laszlo Bock's work rules, people analytics seriously. The rise of opportunity markets really should reinforce what's going on with people analytics on an individual level and on a team level. Whatever kind of granularity or user engagement framework you prefer, Craigslist versus Amazon, these are the kinds of trade-offs. These are the kinds of architectural insights that the organizations that we spoke with are exploring and debating right now. And back to the silo point, are you focusing on identification and development of these programs? Do you deliver them digitally? How comprehensive do you want your platforms to be in that regard? But this is part of the overarching digital transformation trend. And it's become a cliche. We're now in June. It's become a cliche. It began becoming a cliche in May, and it's now a full-fledged cliche in June. And by July or September, it'll be an archetype that the pandemic has accelerated many, if not most, of the digital transformation efforts that most serious organizations have been pursuing. To the extent your organization is doubling down on digitalization and digital transformation roadmaps and agendas, you really want to take seriously opportunity as an organizing principle for how you want to integrate all the processes, all the human capital, all the training, all the development stuff you're doing online. So let me offer a couple of particular examples here. The organization that we found, and they were very helpful to us, and we're very grateful for their openness, and I urge you to read the more detailed and comprehensive story that they offer in the report. The organization that we felt, whose watch we borrowed most, and it was a very nice watch, was Schneider Electric. And Andrew Saidi, who's now the Vice President of Talent Digitalization, was very, very good in our conversations and interactions about the purpose of digital opportunity markets as they become more and more digital. And I want to stress that this is directly connected to the larger Schneider Electric values, be your own boss, etc. Take the initiative, articulated by the CEO, Monsieur Tricoire. So this was not some sort of skunkworks effort that iterated its way to success. This was fully supported by top management, by the CEO and by the CHRO. And the CHRO is not a traditional CHRO. He ran a line business for years and was very aware of the human capital needs and shortcomings of this global organization. But I want to tell you one vignette, an anecdote, and there are all kinds of things: training, development, tasks, jobs. It's comprehensive. Read it. But there was a vignette that he told, which was not in the report, that I want to share with you, that I found very revealing. I asked, as I always do, so this sounds like a terrific concept. What's the resistance to it? The big resistance to opportunity markets at Schneider Electric is that managers are afraid, several managers are afraid that their most talented people will leave them they'll go somewhere else. They'll want to join another group. That it makes it too easy for people to leave their current positions. And the response to this, of course, is, gee, why on earth would anybody want to leave your employ? To what extent is this a reflection of your managerial skill and capabilities as opposed to quote unquote better opportunities? So this opportunity market is also a check on managerial and executive leadership. It is a market mechanism that has an impact and influence on how leaders and managers are perceived. Because if your people are always looking for other opportunities outside of your group, what does that say about the opportunities that you're providing? Amy DeCastro, who is the VP of Human Resources in the US for global business in the US, had also an excellent story in this regard. One of the things that Schneider understandably takes very, very seriously is, because it's a global organization, is exposure to different parts of the organization. They don't want just siloized people. So one of their development and morale and motivation offers on their digital platform, on their opportunity platform, is the opportunity to mentor and be mentored others in other geographies and in other disciplines. And Amy was talking about how she really got to have a positive impact on a CFO who was a little short on the people skill department, but at the same time got tremendous exposure and insight in some of the operational challenges and issues that CFOs have for a capital intensive organization like a Schneider. So the whole notion of peer group exchange, peer group support, building informal networks, the ability to build a network, the opportunity to build a network was one of the unexpected, expected byproducts of this. So I urge you to look at the Schneider case. I also urge you to look at the DBS Bank. MIT Sloan has had a long relationship with DBS Bank. We've done a number of studies with them. And Yingning is the chief learning officer there. DBS is a Singaporean bank and has done quite well. And the CEO there, Piyush Gupta, basically committed DBS to digital transformation, that the bank knew, he as the leader of the bank knew that the bank had to become more digital. Well, this is a conservative bank. It's culturally inertial. And, you know, on some dimensions, it wasn't just an opportunity, there was imposition. This is what the organization imposed. It's a people-centric organization. The phrase that Singh talked about is, we didn't want to leave any of our employees behind. But at the same time, how do you strike a balance between telling everybody you need to transform and giving them agency, offering them agency, creating opportunities for them to learn? So you have to navigate between the stuff that you have to do and the offers of opportunities that allow you to invest in yourself. And reverse mentoring, many of you know, forgive the cultural stereotyping, but many of you know that in most Asian cultures, seniority is very, 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 very highly regarded and prized. But as we undergo digital transformations, it's oftentimes clear that 55-year-olds have an inferior understanding and fluency to digital technologies than 25-year-olds or 30-year-olds. So digital transformation became the opportunity markets for digital transformation became the vehicle by which reverse mentoring and intergenerational collaboration was enabled at the bank. Again, different kinds of networks enabled by this kind of approach to opportunity. I want to stress that the way the bank is choosing to define opportunity is really, really key. And I want to underscore that for larger organizations like this, the question is increasingly shifting from how do we best invest in our people to how do we make it easier and smarter for people to better invest in themselves. That is not a subtle distinction. How do we create and enable opportunity markets on digital platforms that enable people to better invest in themselves in alignment with corporate goals? This was the issue that we dealt with also when we talked to Don May, who's the group CEO and managing director of Domino's. He was phasing in something called the pizza checker. They're very concerned about how do we automate things? How do we automate things and how do we deliver quality pizza faster? Full disclosure, they're just beginning to deal with the opportunity market question. But what was driving it? Because people were afraid that as this thing called pizza checker, which basically is an artificial intelligence visual AI system that literally inspects images of the pizza to see whether it's of the right quality to be sent and delivered in under 15 minutes. He was concerned, rightly, that his not particularly highly paid workforce was afraid that it was being automated out of existence. How do you get people to cooperate? How do you get people to collaborate? How do you get people to feel like working with innovative and breakthrough technology represents an opportunity rather than a threat? And so the theme of how do organizations like Domino's, QSRs like Domino's, think in terms of opportunity markets for their people, this is becoming a much more important issue. I think where we're going, forgive this, I think what we're going to see is the Netflixization of opportunity markets. I think in closer to 3 years than to 5 years, when people log on to their phones or their laptops or their device or listen to their earbud, there's going to be a recommendation engine that advises them on how they manage their day's work and their inbox and what kind of recommendations there are for opportunities they should be pursuing. I believe that we're moving into a recommendation-driven, data-driven world for opportunity markets, for organizations that are serious about cultivating and investing in the human capital of their people. So I'm going to spend the next 3 to 4 minutes telling you the takeaways that I would offer based on the research that we did with Deloitte on this. The one expectations management aspect before I go into the details is I took great pains to make sure there is nothing economically or financially expensive in these takeaways. This is the kind of stuff you can start in the next 24 to 48 hours if you take the future of opportunity seriously. The first is the most obvious. Define what you want opportunity to mean. Define and identify and articulate what you want your opportunity to brand to be, and make sure this kind of opportunity markets initiative is owned by top management, not just HR. Markets are about fair exchange, free with regulation and fair exchange. What kind of fair and free exchange do you want to create? Do you really believe that HR alone is in the best position to define that? I would argue that the best way to do this is articulate an opportunity markets manifesto. Write a manifesto. This is what we want opportunity to mean in our organization. You can have the manifesto be broad enough to embrace the talented and the typical. You can have multiple manifestos, but everybody who is a part of your organization should understand what you want opportunity to mean as a vehicle for individual development and for strategic outcomes. The way to harden this, the way to define this is, what are the use cases for opportunity that you want to create? DBS, Schneider, Domino's did this well. You'll find this in the report. What are the roadmaps? Schneider has one, DBS has one, Domino's was just beginning to articulate. What opportunity use cases do you want a call center person to have, an HR person to have, a product manager to have, a compliance person to have? What's a roadmap? We're not talking about human competency models here or promotion ladders. We're talking about if you give people more agency and more opportunity, what kind of professional development path are you putting them in a position to pursue for themselves? How do you platformize these opportunity markets? How do you turn this into a platform? My colleague at Boston University, Marshall Van Alstyne, had the best definition of a platform and network effects. You know, it's users being able to create value for other users. How do you create opportunity platforms? Platforms like a Craigslist, like an Amazon, like a Netflix, like an Alibaba, like a LinkedIn. How are you going to do that? What do you want? What platform do you want to emulate? Are you thinking in platform terms or product and service terms? Trust me, they're not the same thing, and this is a conversation you need to have sooner rather than later. You want to bake this into the culture and ops of the organization, you need to put opportunity elements into performance reviews and managerial evaluations. You need to ask managers, are you providing opportunities for your people? You need to ask those people, are your managers providing opportunities for you? You need to ask that of the business at large, the silo, the business unit. What are the way opportunities are created? What are the ways they're tracked? What are the ways they're presented? This is not just an HR issue. HR is HR. Opportunity subsumes aspects of HR. How are you going to reinforce your opportunity manifesto and your marketplace in the way you do job and performance reviews? Define opportunity, create a manifesto, identify those key use cases, begin to create a roadmap, think about what you want a platform to feel and look and engage like, and make sure that you build those elements into your market and into your company. Those are my takeaways. Those are my recommendations. I'm open for any questions and comments that you may have. Forgive me for going on a bit longer than I would have liked. Paul, I look forward to your comments, and I really appreciate this. I think this is actually important research. The conversations I've had with people since it's come out has been eye-opening for me, and eye-opening in a good way. I look forward to having my eyes further opened by the participants on this webinar. Thanks.
Thanks, Michael. That was terrific. A really invigorating presentation. And we've got some great questions coming in. And a reminder to all our participants, we're going to take your questions up until the top of the hour, and you can keep submitting them via the questions section in the GoToWebinar control panel.
There we go.
Here we are. So Michael, let's dig in. I can already tell we have more questions that we're going to get to, so we'll try to move through them as quickly as is reasonable. So you identify defining opportunity as the starting point
Yes.
in this process. How has your perception of opportunity changed during the course of the research, or did it?
Actually, it changed very dramatically, because opportunity is one of those words that people bake into, oh, this is an interesting opportunity. And then you start doing the, forgive me, the Taiichi Ono 5 whys. Why is this an interesting opportunity? For whom is it an interesting opportunity? Will this opportunity look as interesting in 60 days as it does now? What's the difference between opportunistic and opportunity? Now, I know I sound like a classic academic on this, but I became much more self-aware and self-conscious about this. And because my background is economics, what's one of the first things they teach you in Economics 101? Opportunity cost. How do you weigh off, if you pursue this opportunity, what's the cost associated with it? Very few organizations internally promote or develop people with an opportunity cost mindset. And so to make people more self-aware, dare I use the word empowerment, I think opportunity is a way of empowering people. So I've become much more, instead of opportunity being seen as something that's on offer, I see about it being something that one takes the initiative around. So I see opportunity much more from a demand side than a supply side now. And what do good markets do? Come up with creative ways of balancing and exploiting supply and demand.
So that definition of opportunity, which I think is really interesting, doesn't necessarily align to the idea of the marketplace. So I'm going to fumble about here, but I like that reaction. Let me instead ask a question. How do you define opportunity in a way that allows you to operationalize it in a marketplace? You've got to be working within some kinds of constraints.
Yes. So I am going to give you the weasel answer in this regard, but
Okay.
it is a legitimate weasel answer. Because we had the same sort of thing. We were talking about opportunities, and we would ask people, well, why are you offering these opportunities versus those opportunities?
Yeah.
And say, because our strategy has us going over here. So for everybody listening on this webinar, don't begin with the opportunity. Begin with the opportunity in the context of what you want to accomplish strategically. DBS Bank, we have to digitally transform. We have to digitally transform, okay? Everything they do connects to digital transformation. Opportunities are linked to digital transformation. Even the things that don't really directly link it are linked to digital transformation. So this is the yin yang thing. It's a strategic outcome opportunity. And that's what I said right at the top. How do you align these things? So organizations that say, what opportunities can we give our people? And they don't harness it to the business unit strategy or the corporate strategy, they're going to screw themselves. So that's the discipline, Paul, that makes it unique to the organization. And that's why different organizations have different perceptions and ratings of what opportunity should mean.
Right. Thank you. So the final few minutes of your presentation in particular, right, suggest that opportunity marketplaces, are more than simply a major shift in the concept of jobs, and they're more than a major shift in the ways work get done. They actually represent a fundamental transformation in culture. So with first of all, feel free to disagree with that, but I think I'm just parroting your words. So given
that's sort of repetition or reinforcement doesn't qualify as parroting. That's reinforcing. Thank you very much.
Okay. But given that, let's talk about kind of the mechanics of opportunity marketplaces and how they can get going. So here's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to kind of align this idea that these represent a broad cultural transformation with how an organization can start in small ways. So can you cordon off a part of the organization to experiment, to kind of vet the model, to see what the challenges are, while still kind of embracing the idea that were we to take this at scale, it would represent virtually a new culture. How do we think about those things together?
Excellent. You're asking for a practical, tactical next step to really build upon what organizations are doing. I'm going to give an answer to that. It's slightly technical, but it's doable. Most organizations now have some sort of remote distance learning, digital learning capabilities that you can track people. I'm doing advisory work for a bank. I have to go through their computer-based training for compliance. It's a bloody nightmare, okay? But how do you connect it? So here's what I see happening. I see one step, like an amoeba extending a pseudopod there. I see one step saying you put an API, an application programming interface, on some of your digital training stuff, and you connect it to a certain kind of job board in your organization, positions available in your organization, and you do some preliminary scraping of keywords, that people eligible for this position need this kind of a background. So you begin to break down the silos. You use APIs and other digital things to break down the silos between digital learning, job postings, urgent projects that need to be done in the next 90 days. And based on the kind of courses people are taking, you send them an alert and you see if they click on that alert. And it works in reverse. There's a certain kind of crash project that's available, and if you can work with Tableau, you should participate in this. And here's the click to get a certification, the organizational certification in Tableau. Who clicks on that? Who explores that? That's how you build up a database. So I think the step is you begin with where you are and you use your digital transformation budget to break down those silos and to create interconnectivity and interoperability. So yes, you're going to have to partner with IT. Yes, you're going to have to partner with digital, but do it intentionally. Do it with the notion of not that we're going to get these systems to talk to each other. We're doing it to get these systems to talk to each other in order to create better opportunity for people. How do we want to measure that?
You mentioned kind of starting where you are. For a lot of organizations, where they are right now is dealing with some very uncertain economic conditions. So how do we think about creating opportunities kind of amidst tight or uncertain economic conditions? And how do you engage the organization in creating opportunities? Ultimately, who's responsible for them? I asked you like 5 questions there, Michael. Sorry.
Yeah, I won't do it in reverse order. You know, because part of my serious background is computer science, I'm going to say you've described a bug which we can turn into a feature. Mm-hmm. Virtually everybody is working remote. Virtually everybody is digital. There's never been a better time for platformizing an opportunity market than today. If everybody is meeting face to face, gee, we can cheat it. We can do these things informally. Now you can't. Now you can't. So actually, this is why I said this is a great time for these things. So that's it. Let's do it. I thought it was a simple A/B experiment. Do you want, ask people, let's do a simple A/B experiment. You send people a message, you know, do you want to see a list of job opportunities, crash program opportunities, professional development opportunities, mentoring opportunities? Give them a little survey buttons. And then you begin to do push notifications. This is available, this not. What portion of the people working remotely will press on those buttons? 5%, 10%, 50%? Because I'm going to say this, Paul. Everybody working remotely today, whether they want to come back to the office or not, sometime in September, they're going to say, what is my life going to look like in a year? What opportunities is my organization giving me that makes me want to stay? Because if they're not giving, I'm going to go. The first chance I get, I'm going to go. And if you're one of those organizations that believe people have nowhere to go, so we can afford to underinvest in opportunity, this is the wrong webinar for you. Because really, this is just a tactic. You don't really care about people. You're looking for what's the minimum investment I can make to keep people working in a way that's acceptable to me. Opportunity markets are for organizations that care about effectively aligning their talent and their typical people with strategic outcomes. Market mechanisms tend to be efficient and effective. Build one.
Two important questions from the audience about kind of conditions and applicability. So one is about size of the organization. Does an organization have to have, you know, a certain size and perhaps diversity of opportunities in order for a marketplace to be effective? That's one question.
Yes.
Second is, how senior in an organization can marketplaces apply? So one of our audience members is from an organization that has opportunity markets, but they're limited lower than director levels. So how big an organization do you need, and how high, sorry, very, very old-fashioned hierarchical term, but how senior in an organization can opportunity marketplaces apply?
Well, I'll be very blunt with you. The second part of your question is much more interesting to me than the first part, but I'll answer the first part first. We saw, bluntly, we were biased to larger legacy organizations, partly because of the work we did with Deloitte, partly because of who we were doing the surveys on. I believe, after talking with people, that this may not be, you know, in a small organization, it depends on how you define small, you probably can deal with these things, if you'll excuse the expression, face to face or more intimately. You know, medium organizations, transparency and alignment and coordination, you should probably be doing experiments with what you want your opportunity market to look like. But the premise of the question is a fair one. I think once you get to several hundred people, and certainly once you get to several thousand people, opportunity markets are serious. How high should they go? I'm going to give you the cynical answer. Paul and I have known each other for years. I'm going to give you the cynical answer that Paul really was expecting me to give on this. It's that at a certain level, I think opportunity market should be, just like with boards, everything has a market aspect. How high should an internal opportunity market go? I think it should incorporate the CEO. I think it should go right up to the C level. CEO should see opportunities for mentorship and development and all these things. But I think at the highest level, it's not about markets. It's about power and control. And I'm old enough and well-read enough to say that I'm not going to get CEOs to change their behavior to make things more efficient. They're running an enterprise. At a certain level, they're going to do what they want to do or what their band of people believe they want to do. But if they really care about getting value from their people, the human capital of their people, if they really care about empowering and giving agency to their people, if they care about more efficiently using these human assets, just like they care about their financial assets, they should explore market mechanisms like opportunity markets. So the answer to the second question is, what's the culture of the organization? The answer to the first question is, when does the economics make sense? And that's Ronald Coase, the 1937 Nobel Prize winning essay on the theory of the firm. Why firms? Why do firms exist? Coordination costs, transaction costs, opportunity costs.
Michael, you spoke just then about senior leaders giving empowerment, giving agency. Let's talk about whether there's a role in opportunity marketplaces for people to take rather than be given. And this ties to a question from the audience. What about allowing marketplaces from the bottom up by encouraging people to express interests outside of their job descriptions, express interest in new job opportunities rather than waiting for those opportunities to be created for them?
I am so grateful for that question. That is I accept the premise of the question, keeping in mind that organizations are, they have fiduciary responsibilities to investors, et cetera. We do see in organizations efforts to do bottom up. The one thing that I did not do in my talk, and that question makes me ashamed that I did not do it, is that I did not identify a very important split that we observed in our research. There were organizations with opportunity markets that really focused on jobs, job opportunities, professional development opportunities. But we spoke with organizations like Marriott, which of course has been badly hit by the pandemic, that they wanted more whole person opportunity markets, balance between work life, vacation, swapping vacation days, being able to doing things that allowed you to enjoy your life out of work, do charity work in Marriott service, etc. So, so that's one of the schisms of opportunity markets: whole person opportunity markets and employee opportunity markets. I would encourage bottom up. I think that would be a very interesting experiment to do, which is, what kind of opportunities should we be provisioning and providing? How do you allow people to, and I picked this phrase deliberately, self-organize? Now, I think it would be, I'm speaking only partly tongue-in-cheek here, I don't imagine many opportunity markets would survive if they are being used as gray markets to organize a union or collective bargaining. But the issue of how should we encourage and facilitate bottom-up opportunity creation is the exact right question for many organizations. And sadly or happily, it connects to the question you just asked me, which is, would a CEO, would a board encourage this? If I were running such a bottom-up effort, I would get a committee on the board to support this. I would literally disintermediate the C-suite for this, because I think it's important, and I'm saying this as a former board member and knowing what a fiduciary is, I think it's important to see how people who actually do the work see opportunity and define opportunity differently from the top executives in an organization. I'm not saying that, by the way, in a populist way. I'm saying that as I believe multiple perspectives are best, and healthy markets give you multiple perspectives. The sin of the marketplace, this is my one political comment, the sin of the marketplace is that we use price as a proxy for so many value things. But what markets are really about are fair exchange. So I am more interested in fair exchange than price. And opportunity markets to me are about fair exchange. If I take you up on this opportunity, I'm going to get just as much out of this as you. It's going to be fair. That's a big deal. And that's the bottom-up ethos that I would encourage people to consider.
Let's stay on this kind of idea of capturing the value of the opportunity, particularly with respect to kind of where we are right now. You set up one very important, I think, compelling part of the setup to this is that opportunity, is a reward, not the right word, but when organizations are hard pressed to give people economic rewards that they might have been able to in the past, opportunity and the availability of opportunity is that much more important.
Let's stick with the title of the presentation. Opportunity should be a motivator.
Yeah.
Okay. So if people don't feel motivated by opportunity, we can call it whatever you want. It really, it's the demand side doesn't see it as a motivator. If I'm not motivated to explore an opportunity, it ain't an opportunity. It's a distraction.
Yeah, great. Let's talk about how we capture the value of the opportunity over the long term. There's a risk. There's an apparent risk, and I want you to speak to this because it may not be a risk at all. There's an apparent risk that when you begin to break down jobs into tasks, it will be harder for the organization to kind of understand who you are. It will be harder to plan a career path. It will be harder to achieve promotion. Speak to how organizations kind of can overcome those challenges as we reconceive jobs.
Well, first and foremost, I wish I was that smart. Paul, you know that I like to think smart, but and I come to this, as Paul will tell you, I come to this more from an AI, machine learning, technology replacing things. I'm not really a people person per se. I hedge by calling myself a human capital person on this. It does become harder, and this is the point. And some people are not going to like my saying this, but I don't mean this in a political way. It does become harder, and precisely because it becomes harder for the organization to do this. Gee, we're deconstructing this, we're automating this. How can we assess the value of this person? We've got to stop treating people like pawns and pieces on a chessboard. How do you give people agency? How do you empower people to say, I understand why you want me to do this, but I think this is a better opportunity for me? Okay. By the way, where did we see this in our research? We worked with the Henry Ford group. Okay, the Henry Ford healthcare group, 30,000 people. Guess what? You'll be not surprised at this. What was the fastest growing, unexpected, marginal backwater thing that they did in the wake of, as COVID kicked in? Telemedicine. Telemedicine became huge on this. Some people, they couldn't come to the emergency room. They had family, they had exposed people, they had vulnerable population, but they had to participate. That became an opportunity, something that people wouldn't have thought about doing, they embraced under these circumstances. You could not have known ex ante what happened. How do you allow and encourage people to take the initiative? And this is where I believe is the real schism is going to. Some people really like structure and direction. The world in which we're going, I think, is going to impose more and more agency on you. It's called a recommendation engine, not a compliance engine. The world that you're describing, Paul, is if we move to a time when people do what they're told because of the systems, we're breaking up your job, this is what you do now. then we're being told what to do by an algorithm. Maybe instead of calling it Netflixization, we'll call it Uberization. You still have the option not to do the pickup, not to do the drive, but for all intents and purposes, you're following their map, you're accepting the customer they assigned to you, and that script, etc. So it's the battle of the algorithmic innovation, or the battle of the algorithmic workflow in this regard. So our counterweight to this is, what do we want agency to mean? What do we want initiative to mean? What do we want empowerment to mean? How do we negotiate the freedom to choose with the strategic imperative of the enterprise? Ain't no way I'm going to solve that problem, but I can help you articulate it better. I can even help you manage it better. Do an opportunity market.
Organizations that have implemented opportunity markets, how has the financial reward system evolved, or has it? So that an extension of what you were just saying is that people should get paid by the task, not by the job. So how do we? And I see a real disconnect between traditional remuneration and this kind of breakdown in tasks.
Wow, Paul, you are exactly correct, and I'm embarrassed, not ashamed. I'm embarrassed to say that we discussed compensation only in passing. I think you've now suggested, you've come up with what we should do as our next level of research, which is, as opportunity markets evolve and become more sophisticated, how should incentives and compensation change? I think that's exactly the right question to ask, because that's an Uber question. We know with Netflix there's a subscription side, but then there's an on-demand side. What's the difference between base compensation and performance compensation? You're exactly right. How does performance and loyalty and development, because if you're immediately going to change jobs, we're going to look at compensation. If it's a transaction rather than a relationship, we're going to compensate differently. If it's just a job, the whole life aspect, as opposed to the work aspect, is going to be treated differently. I think you've put your finger on the next generation of research here. I regret that what we did only gets us to the precipice. It doesn't allow us to leap into the precipice there.
Well, this is the problem when you come when you're at the vanguard of a new idea and you have somebody curious like me.
You smooth talking devil, Paul. Thank you.
Yeah. We'll agree to meet again in a year and talk about compensation. Right, we have time.
Get us a sponsor for that one, okay?
Yeah. Okay. We have time for one more question from the audience, and I'm going to thank everybody for their questions. They're overwhelming in number and intelligence, and I regret we're only getting to a small.
Send them to me. I'd like to see them.
I will absolutely do that, and Michael will independently answer every one of them. But this is a tactical question, but it's an important one. How narrow can you go with opportunity marketplaces without making them inefficient?
Wow. Well, of course, back to economics. What do you want your efficient frontier to look like? I didn't pick the Craigslist versus Amazon by accident. I'm sure that you have job postings. I mean, the two things there. One is the opportunity market. The other is an opportunity platform. They're different. How do you want to make your job postings or announcements more like a market? Do you get people to bid for jobs, bid for tasks? How do you marketize these things? This is the subject of Nobel Prize winning research, Leonard Hurwitz, Michael Spence. I mean, we reference some of this in our report. The notion of the design of internal market mechanisms is one of the most exciting bits going on in economic research. Michael Kramer from Harvard won a Nobel Prize. Our own Esther Duflo at MIT won a Nobel Prize in this. I encourage people to begin looking at the literature on simple market mechanisms to test these ideas before scaling it. But ultimately, I think you're doing digital transformation anyway. I think you want to think really hard about what role opportunity should play in the design, development, and deployment of your digital transformation platform.
Thank you very much. This has been a fascinating conversation, and you and I could have gone on for several more hours. I want to thank everyone in our audience for joining us today and for the fantastic questions.